So,
What letter is this?
Q.
Q. This is indeed a Q.
Froggy.
All right. Welcome to the Patriot Hour. We got Woodman in here with us. Looks like he's currently off screen. All right. Looks like he's having technical difficulties, folks. All right. Welcome to the Patriot Hour. We got Ben joining in, possibly Woodman. Why are you lost, L? What's going on here? What do you mean? No, it just started. Are you just waking up? All right, welcome to the show. I'm going to wait a minute here. All right, we got some stream seems to be half. How is everyone's day today? Good afternoon, morning, depending on where you're at. Yeah, we just started the transmission, folks. All right, let me pull something up here. I'm going to wait a few minutes. We got the live Senate confirmation taking place. I'm going to pull this up here for a minute. Here we go, folks. Copy.
Process and power shifting through the processes of voting by an informed electorate. And free speech is foundational to the ability to have a democratic process. The framers, I think, believe that the dialectic, the clashing of ideas in the public marketplace, is the way to arrive at the truth. And that is one function. Another function of free speech is that it's the substitute for other means of settling differences. In some ways, it's a safety valve. People are allowed to speak their mind and persuade their neighbors of their position. And I think that performs a very important function in keeping the peace within a community. And if speech is suppressed, it can lead to the building up of pressures within society that sometimes can be explosive.
How about your views on religious liberty, and would you share your thoughts on the importance of the religious liberty protections in the First Amendment in terms of protecting our diverse and pluralistic society?
Yes, I think the framers believe that our system, they said that our system only works if the people are in a position to control themselves. Our government is an experiment in how much freedom we can allow the people.
All right, we're just listening in here a little bit. We got Ben joining in. Woodman looks like he's there, but looks like he might be frozen up.
And they believe that part of that self-control know there are many people here who disagree.
He's having issues over there today.
But in our society, we disagree. But they believe part of that self-control ultimately came from religious values. And I think it's important underpinning of our system that we permit. I believe in the
We'll be back,
separation
folks.
of
We're just
church and
listening in a
state.
little bit. We'll talk about it.
But I am sometimes concerned that we not use governmental power to suppress the freedoms of traditional religious communities in our country.
Final question. The Department of Justice is charged with defending the United States, but that doesn't mean that the Department of Justice always must argue for maximum federal power. There are important restraints on federal power, whether civil liberties protections in a criminal context, whether the Takings Clause, or whether the 10th Amendment and federalism. Can you briefly share your thoughts on the appropriate balance of respecting the limitations on federal power?
Well, as you say, the Constitution has many different forms of restraint on federal power. Part of it is, in fact, the separation of powers within the federal government. Part of it is the balance between the federalist system we have and the central government, and respecting the rights of the states and local communities. And part of it is the Bill of Rights that on certain topics constrains the role of the federal government. And those are all important checks on federal power. And, I am concerned about our country becoming just a unitary state that we try to govern centrally, 350 million people. I think a lot of our current tensions in society are because we are turning our back on the federalist model. There are certain things that have to be protected by the federal government. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But the more we can decentralize decision-making, the more we can allow people a real diversity in the country of approaches to things, I think we'll have less of an explosive situation.
I very much agree. Thank you, Mr. Barr.
The freedom of speech has to be balanced by the freedom to question. Senator Coons.
Congratulations, Chairman Graham. I look forward to working with you in this Congress. And thank you, Mr. Barr, and to you and your family for their service to our country through federal law enforcement and the Department of Justice. You just faced some questioning from Senator Cruz about your own confirmation hearing back in 1991, and I'd like to take us back to a previous confirmation hearing, which was at a more similar time to today than 1991, 1973. Senator Leahy asked you about the confirmation of Elliot Richardson, President Nixon's nominee to be Attorney General. That confirmation took place in the context of a similarly divided period in American history where there was great concern over the, at that point, ongoing Watergate investigation. And Elliot Richardson reassured the country by making some important commitments during his confirmation hearing before this committee. Then Senator Strom Thurmond asked Richardson if he wanted a special prosecutor who would, and I quote, shield no one and prosecute this case regardless of who was affected in any way, shape, or form. Richardson responded, exactly. Do you want Special Counsel Mueller to shield no one and prosecute the case regardless of who is affected?
I want Special Counsel Mueller to discharge his responsibilities as a federal prosecutor and exercise the judgment that he's expected to exercise under the rules and finish his job.
Senator Kennedy followed up by asking Richardson if the special prosecutor would have the complete authority and responsibility for determining whom he prosecuted and at what location. Richardson said simply, yes. Would you give a similar answer?
No, I would give the answer that's in the current regulations, which is that the special counsel has, broad discretion, but the acting attorney general in this case, Rod Rosenstein, can ask them about major decisions, and if they disagree on a major decision, and if after giving great weight to the special counsel's position, the acting attorney general felt that it was so unwarranted under established policies that it should not be followed, then that would be reported to this committee.
Forgive me, I've got 7
Okay.
minutes left. I have a number of other questions. Let me just make sure I understand you. Senators asked Elliot Richardson what he would do if he disagreed with the special prosecutor. Richardson testified to the committee the special prosecutor's judgment would prevail. That's not what you're saying. You're saying that if you have a difference of opinion with special counsel Mueller, you won't necessarily back his decision. You might overrule it.
Under the regulations, there is the possibility of that, but this committee would not, would be aware of it. A lot of water has gone under the dam since Elliot Richardson, and a lot of different administrations on both parties have experimented.
So what are we listening into here? I was trying to help Woodman, so I wasn't able to even pay attention.
No, this is another confirmation hearing. They're trying to see where his belief systems lie. It says he's sounding good about the First Amendment and how that really trumps. I like how he's trying to decentralize the decision-making process, which in essence means give it back to the people for us to make a decision. Interesting. He is Trump's pick. Mr. Woodman, how we doing, brother? Oop.
We got you, brother.
Let me try and figure this out here.
We can do a postmortem then, but
Did I do it right? Correct? All right.
You're in, brother.
Walla Walla.
You're in.
Sorry, gentlemen.
You're all right. We're just listening in. I'm actually having issues myself. Let me get this properly pasted in there. Let's do that. The Patriot Hour.
What's up, Mr. Woodman? How we doing this morning or this afternoon, brother?
Okay. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good.
You can hear me? You hear me good?
It's a lot better, brother. A lot better. How does it sound when we're talking back and forth in the headphones? You can hear me and talk pretty easily.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Yeah.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
For sure. For sure.
All right, so this is Trump's pick or a smokescreen, somebody said. So who is this? William Barr. He started back in the old Bush era. William Barr. President Trump picks William Barr, Attorney General under President H.W. Bush, to return to DOJ helm. Where's this guy been?
Now, is he trying to keep him President Trump is known to keep his enemies closer and give them a rope to hang themselves, according to Sarah Ann McGibbon.
So this guy, he served as a 77th United States Attorney General under from 91 to 93 during the first Bush administration.
I wonder what his relationship to George H.W. was in relation. Do they have a good relationship, or are they like always at odds? The Attorney General was trying to fight for the Constitution, and the President was trying to usurp at the time. Who knows? Charles Roach says the chess game against the Bush clan begins.
Does he know things? It looks like this guy. So he left in 94. Barr was appointed by Virginia Governor George Allen to co-chair a commission to reform the criminal justice system and abolish parole in the state. Later in 94, Barr became executive vice president and general counsel of GTE Corporation, where he's been for the last 14 years, or he was at for 14 years. During his corporate tenure, Barr directed a successful litigation campaign by the local telephone industry to achieve deregulation by scuttling a series of FCC rules, personally arguing several cases in the federal courts of appeals and the Supreme Court. In 2008, when GTE merged with Bell Atlantic to become Verizon Communications, he left the position. While at GTE from 97 to 05, Barr also served on the board of visitors of the College of William and Mary. So this guy kind of vanished out of the political realm and went into the private sector shortly after.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just some facts that you can chew on and let marinate.
Yeah. Well, and we don't know if, like in some people, they know where the bodies are buried, if you will. They know the secrets, and it's very interesting who Trump is appointing for these positions, and the Attorney General has a pretty that's a pretty powerful position to have.
Well, right here it says social issues. In 91, Barr stated that he believed the framers of the Constitution did not originally intend to create a right to abortion. He goes into some of that. 2016, Barr donated $55,000 to Jeb Bush during the 2016 elections. In 2017, Barr said that there was nothing inherently wrong with Donald Trump's calling for investigating Hillary Clinton while the two were both running for president. Barr added that an investigation into the Uranium One controversy was more warranted than looking into whether Trump conspired with Russia to influence the 2016 elections. So
that sounds
crazy.
pretty promising. Yeah, no, that sounds promising that, if he's put this kind of stuff up. Again, like, we're here at the Patriot Hour, we're always very critical about who's being entered into these positions, because we all here know exactly how powerful and these positions are, and what they can do in these particular positions. So always keeping a critical eye on what's happening, just like with Justice Kavanaugh, what happened to him, where his background, where he's now at. And so this should be a unique thing here to see.
Hey, Woodman, we got you over there, brother?
Yeah,
All
you hear me,
right.
don't you? Yeah.
Got you good.
Let me turn this music down a bit.
Gosh, man, that watching Trump speak last night was pretty awesome. Did you see it then, Mike?
I didn't catch that last night.
The farm thingy he was talking to those people. Is that
Boy,
what you're talking
I'm
about,
telling you
Woodman?
what, man. Yeah.
What did you catch out of that? Anything interesting you'd like to share?
Well, gee whiz. Hello.
Welcome to the Patriot Hour.
Welcome to the Patriot Hour. Special guests.
You really didn't see the show, Mike?
No, I did not, brother. Nope.
Oh, it was fantastic, man. He was pretty much to the point, about let's say what the Dems are trying to do. You know what I mean? And they mentioned here's the next crowd coming to. Ben, what did you get to see the whole show, Ben, or what?
I saw a couple snippets of it, but yes, he was talking about there is a new quote unquote gaggle, 15,000 plus or so people preparing and getting ready to come up. Now, there's really that he didn't really give any specifics, but if we can take what happened in the first potential or the first attempted evasion, then we can only see that there's a new group coming. And we talked about this, I believe, on the last couple shows about the logistics and who's paying for all this stuff and all this kind of stuff. So he did touch on that as well, although I didn't watch the whole entire speech. I think he did press again on the border security.
Yeah, what I was referring to is how many times he had mentioned that this wall, the money was allocated for this wall. I don't know how many times. Well, just because he asked for it, now it's shut down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
Did
in
you
the
catch that
history.
part,
Yeah.
Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. When he was trying to, basically, like he's been saying, we're going to be indirectly getting the money from the wall and other places. These deals we're making, we're already saving billions of dollars, and so this wall is just going to be minute. Now, again, I didn't capture the whole entire speech, so whatever I say, I don't know. I'm nitpicking, or I should say, not nitpicking. I'm cherry picking out of the speech, so I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah. He mentioned, and I should have wrote it all down about how many people, presidents, had
Past presidents have supported.
requested that money, and it was all approved by all these other people.
It's all
But
smoke
then when
and
it came
mirrors,
down
though.
to Trump
It's-
doing it,
Yeah,
hey,
it was all smoke and mirrors. It
When-
sounded good. That's what most people wanted, and like, yeah. So they talk about it when it was time to talk about it, but then once it was off the record, nobody did anything, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. But you're right. There's lots of record of these past presidents and politicians supporting barriers and anything. The funny thing, me and Ben were talking about this morning, a little bit of garage talk, was that they're now talking about that walls are prehistoric or just medieval. And we're like, well, what was going on back then that, the concept of people were coming to invade something still exists. Like people, medieval times, walked to a border and crossed the border. So they put up walls. You can take that all the way to today, and people are walking to the borders and climbing these fences. So nothing's changed. So the border would still work in the same medieval way, however they want to portray that. They say we need drones. Well, drones, if you're trying to go to technology, what does a drone do? You have a drone flying, it detects somebody, maybe an alarm goes off, and it just alerts some guy at a computer 100 miles away at some data center. Oh, we got, looks like the drone's telling us 15 people just crossed. Are you going to attach bombs to the drone to stop them? I mean, is that inhumane? We don't want to go there. So you do the wall. Because Jim Acosta proved with that, right? When he went up to that medieval barrier, and he's like, "Look, folks, I'm right here at this medieval barrier, and there's no crisis. There's nobody rushing this from the other side. I can see right through it." You're right; it works. So now we know it didn't work at Pelosi's, right, Ben?
Well, yeah. I mean, the medieval wall thing that has been working since medieval times. That should tell you that this type of idea to keep people out from a certain location works pretty well. We've been doing it since medieval times. And of course, like you said, Jim Acosta confirmed the medieval technology working at 100%
in lifetime
functionality in lifetime. What do you do? What do you do when you see this kind of stuff? Again, Mike, you're right. It is smoke and mirrors. Drones aren't going to do anything. Technology, again, we're trying to stop something. We don't want to be alerted when something happens.
Yeah, no more alerts, folks.
No more alerts. I mean, that's good. I mean, we like technology to telescopes. You can see long distances. Yeah, that's fine. But again, with this whole Pelosi thing, by the way, with people storming her fence and her barrier and getting into her property, I wonder if she's going to have construction to raise her wall
the White
and
House
boast
did.
her security.
Under Obama, they put in to raise the White House fences. Why?
People were climbing over, getting through.
They didn't legislate to take them down because they weren't working. They looked at like, well, people are jumping over this damn thing. Let's make it a little taller, make it a little harder for them to jump over. So there's an option. But we talking about Pelosi. Yes, folks, we don't condone it. Somebody opposing her ideas yesterday. This lady's well known for it, I guess, but she went to Pelosi's with what she claimed to be several illegals, and they jumped her fence at her mansion. And then they set up a tent in her yard, a big white tent with the four corners, and just drove the stakes in the ground. And they had pictures hanging all around it of all the people that have been killed by illegal immigrants in this country. And they had all the photos of them and recognizing them. And then they went to her house, and the door was locked. They were trying to get in, literally, and she admitted that we were trying to get in, but the door's locked.
I had to call the cops because people were coming to get me.
And I guess Pelosi's not there. She's on vacation somewhere. So, but I guess she got
Puerto
wind
Rico,
of it.
I think.
And yeah, they called the cops. So now what I'm saying is these same people that oppose a border wall, these are the same people opposing ICE agents, and they don't want ICE agents. They don't want law enforcement. So for Pelosi's house, okay, the wall didn't work, her security fence. But the second scenario was police arrived on the scene and made these people leave. In our country scenario, it would be jumping the wall, and if they get caught, they should be arrested. We not only have people in this country not wanting the wall, they don't want them arrested on the other side either. And they're calling for law enforcement to be pulled away because it would be a better place if we didn't have that. But yet, here for Pelosi's, it's the wall and then the police. And then the people got removed. Is it immoral? What do you guys think on that?
What you think, Woodman?
Is that hypocrisy or what? What's going on?
Look, well, she did evidently make higher walls, right? Didn't she?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's her
That's
fence.
speculating. That only happened like I think 48 hours ago. So myself, I'm speculating and saying, wouldn't it be interesting?
This happened yesterday at noon, actually, like
at
noon or 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, anyway.
in the garage talk, we were speculating that wouldn't it be funny if she had a construction crew raise her wall because of what happened a couple of days ago, and now she's saying that she doesn't want the federal wall, but yet she's building her personal wall higher. We thought, how much of a hypocrisy, kind of like the kettle calling the pot black type thing.
Exactly. She finally got a taste of it, you know.
She don't like it. She don't like it.
Check it out. Check it out, man. Why don't she go down? Why don't she go down to the border and camp out down there for a while, unarmed, in kind of like what you call a hot spot where people are coming across the border? Why don't you go down there and check that out for a while? Let her camp out for a week. You know, no weapons. You know.
No secret security. No. You want her to be like the rest of us, man. Wow, that's pretty harsh. But no security guards, no Secret Service, no all there, all by herself, and to hope that everybody does the right thing because hopefully the non-existent fence is truly not working.
It's the non-existing wall is it's a magical. You can't cross it. You know what I mean? Let's put up some drones so we can go ahead and tally up how many people do actually come in.
There you go.
And where they're coming in from. Wow.
We'll do that for 10 years, and then we can devise a plan to possibly slow it down a little bit. But we need to know the numbers.
You know, this is funny. Go ahead.
How deep are they involved in what they're involved in to, divert from the wall? Let's do this technology crap. I wonder what they're really doing. Technology is not going to get it. I'm sorry. What are you going to do? Be like Star Wars and have a big old laser cannon that can cover, 500 miles, then you have another one? Wake up, people. Technology's fine, but it has its place. And that is not its place. Get the wall up, and then use those drones. So then you find out where the hot spots are, or what problem areas they have. That just makes sense.
No,
what's funny is
the wall of China. Is it still up?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it served its purpose. The Great Wall, or what? Back in its day.
Walla. You're not gonna. And then you don't have these, like I was talking about the other day, you don't have these MacGyvers with these extendo ladders hanging off their back pocket, and all of a sudden it extends out to 40, 50 feet and you scale the wall. But don't happen that way. You know what I mean?
I agree. It's interesting. A bunch of us veterans, we know how much a drone costs, right? A few million, 50, $60 million for some of these drones. Now we're talking about low tech, medieval technology, and how can we maximize that? Why don't we just put closed camera TV cameras all along the border wall and have one guy looking at all the cameras and be like, oh, hey, they're coming on our south side. They're coming on this side. You guys don't understand what can happen at such a low technology. When they say we need technology, we need this kind of stuff, you got to understand it's a smoke and mirrors. Did we use this high technology when we're trying to have boots on the ground, getting intel from local village elders and this kind of stuff? No, it was a human talking to another human, or we were taking pictures and sending them back this way. It wasn't a multi-million-dollar drone flying over. It was boots on the ground. And so when we're talking about this wall, the technology we need, how about infrared night cameras on the wall so we can see who's coming on there? How about good call boxes to all the stations?
Well, you're talking
so all
about
the,
Israel. Israel's wall is new,
Yep, that's
built
exactly
with technology in mind around it. They have a physical, very tall, hard to scale wall. And then they got the laser. Like, what were you talking about, Ben? You know a little bit. I think they had a laser.
Yes, they have a laser ground to air laser detection system. Is like a blanket, a spider web over all of that area, and it detects any type of RPGs, rockets, that kind of stuff. This laser system, and immediately shoots off ground to air missiles to intercept any type of artillery or missiles coming into Israel. This was one of their military things they did for the Palestinians, always getting the stuff over. So we've already seen. Now, by the way, the wall is hard for us to compare to for Israel because they've been building it for a good 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And of course, we've been helping them from our foreign aid, of course. So if they have a good wall and we paid for their wall, and there's a lot of countries and all of our embassies across the earth, they have high barriers and we've paid for that. Why don't we take and pay for our own wall? And we can take examples like Israel and their wall and their technology and how they incorporate a medieval structure with 21st century technology.
When they were building that, we were looking into the Star Wars program, wasting monies on that. See, folks, this is the deal. You guys can think or add in on this when I'm done. I'm just gonna take a second on this, but it's like it's so hard to get through. Most people right now oppose the wall because it's like Woodman said. It's because Trump is wanting to do it, and since they oppose Trump, they'll just oppose no matter what he says. Right? We've talked about this, Ben. Trump comes out, I'm gonna feed the hunger around the world. We're tired of people starving over in this place over here. These pundits would come out and say, oh, we got our own starving here, and he needs to take care of the starving homeless here. So then if Trump came out and said, I'm going to fix the homeless here and the hungry here, people would be like, people are going to die around the world because Trump's only worried about here. So no matter what he says, it's wrong. We get it. They don't want to do the wall. But people that have not been paying attention, don't care about where their tax dollar goes. There's an $80 trillion budget that just got approved. $54 billion in foreign governmental aid is going out to foreign countries, taxpayers, $54 billion. So out of 80 trillion, very simplified, 80 trillion, 5 billion is like, if you make a salary of 50 grand a year, folks, it's like $4, $5 out of your yearly salary is the equivalent of what this wall costs out of the budget. Most people don't understand that because the numbers are so big. There's lots of zeros added in. And it confuses them. When they hear 5 billion, they think, I'll never have 5 billion. That's a lot of money. But in on honesty of what they grab and take from us all year long and what they're pushing, the 80 trillion, it's a fraction. So then you argue, we don't need a wall. It's not going to work. And it's like, well, what we have right now doesn't work. And to do nothing isn't going to work. So I say, build the wall. If it doesn't work, we're still in the exact situation that we're in, but then they're like, oh, but now I'm out $5 billion. No, you are already out. That whether the money's already allocated, we're just saying where to put it to. So you're already out the money regardless. Why don't we take $5 billion away from foreign aid and keep it for the wall? Well, they still like, no, that's going to the foreign people, not us. I don't know, folks. What do you think on that? What do you think?
Go ahead, Woodman. What you think, Woodman?
Chief Whiz. I don't have a whole lot to say. Come on, man. I mean, okay, here, anti-wall people. How much money do you think it's going to save our country once we get the wall in here and we stop those 80% of people? How much money do you think our government's going to save by not spending it on chasing down all this stuff? Yeah, but rest you're really forced to split up families that way too, But see, then they focus on you're splitting up families. Well, they're the ones allowing it.
Well, like we
Gee
said,
whiz.
kids or adults or old elderly probably won't be able to get over a big barrier wall. Everyone acts like, well, they'll all just do other things, dig tunnels, fly over. Well, you can fly over now and go under a tunnel now. Why are they not? And it's because there's no wall there. They just could walk through. So then we do that. That forces them to go underground. Do you think everybody wants to, crawl into a tunnel and weasel? Or if they could fly, why don't they do that now? Why do they risk the trek through the dangerous 2-week trip or however far it is for them? What is your answer on that?
Once they start going through tunnels and stuff, so we get the wall build up. Then they start going through these tunnels or whatever. Then we can concentrate on what we call hot spots. You can't have, 5 million tunnels going across from country to country. Find those tunnels. Some of them end up in businesses or a house or what have you. Find the hot spots. Just slowly but surely start shutting them down. That problem solved. You're gonna knock out at least 90% of all that crap that way. You know what I mean? You're still gonna get some people in. They're gonna find a way to get in, but human trafficking and drug trafficking, all that is gonna be. They're gonna have a hard time getting through. The way it is now, come on, man, it's wide open. It's like playing football. There's a wide open field. There's no defense in front of you. You could run the ball, you could pass the ball, you could probably run across the line backwards if you wanted to. You know what I mean? There's nothing there to stop anybody.
Put up a little barrier. I mean, it's yeah. It's a natural thing of if there's nothing there, it's almost like, come on. And, we want to put up a really wide, a really tall wall, but we want to have big doors on it. All right. We want big doors. We want people. We encourage you to come to that door and knock on it. That's all.
Sure.
Well, I find it interesting. Whereas this new USMCA deal has now saved hundreds of billions of dollars.
Nobody's looking at it.
In one fell swoop. Nobody says that. When Trump said something like this is going to put $300 billion back into our coffers, if you don't understand business terms about what a coffer is in a particular company or a corporation, that's where our budget comes from. Mike said it very clearly. They already have our money. It's already all said and done. They're trying to figure out where to allocate existing budgets. And so if we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars that we were spending 2 years ago or last year, and we're saving all that money, it's a rouge for these people to tell you that there's no money, it's $5 billion, they can't handle it, when we're already been told by our president on many occasions that we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars already, not just hopefully in the future, already in that from what's happening right now. We're not getting blueberries from Chile, and we're not getting bananas from Brazil, and we're not getting strawberries from the Dominican Republic for free of charge. They're actually more expensive in some stores now, and it's becoming to buy fruit that's not grown within the United States because it has a higher higher tariffs on it because of the North American Free Trade Agreement. So just think about all this stuff.
Elle said at the Patriot Tech, through the Mexico-Canada-U.S. trade deal, Mexico will pay for the wall. See, and I agree, but others don't see it that way. They want to literally, some people need to have money handed to them, and then they want to do this with it, and they have to hear it that way, see it that way. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. But put it this way.
Yeah, Trump's like, they're not going to give us a huge check from Mexico. And here's your
we
wall.
hold it up, here's a big cool-looking check hanging on the wall. Think about it, folks. How about these same people out there? Like we said, the money's already there. The budget's already in. It's just allocating. And it's like, no, that's a waste. Black budget. Would just like, can we take $5 billion of our taxpayers out of the black budget and build a wall? And the black budget only gets like 30 trillion this time. And people are like, no wall. Give it all to the black budget. Well, even happens in the black budget? No, I don't know anything what they do because it's secretive and they're not allowed to tell us.
It's a black budget,
They're going to just build another spacecraft that don't fly, and then they're going to bury it in the desert, and 5,000 people die because of the fuel, the byproduct of it is cancerous. And
so how many hundreds of millions of dollars they waste on each one of them little stupid projects?
Yeah.
Not a major one, not a major one, a small project.
Yeah.
Let's go to Mars and spend all that kind of money and
look
can't
for
build a
microorganisms. Think
We're
about
having issues with renewable energy, and how about 0 point energy, which is I don't say free energy because that's in a layman's term, but how about the 0 point energy? How about all this technology that we know that has been suppressed by the deep state in our government, health, all this kind of stuff that why isn't it out to us? How come, and so it's very, very, I agree with you 100%. I mean, there would, man, for a fact that their agenda, the evil agenda is now coming out to light more and more. You can't deny they're lying currently because of what they said in the past. We've got video evidence. This in the day and age now, you can't hide stuff. If you say something a year ago and then you're saying something different, you're going to get slammed. And so this is out in the open so much that the border wall has been, I would say, the mainstream narrative. But on this channel, I think we all know that's only the tip of the iceberg. And this goes much, much deeper because a governmental shutdown opens up avenues to renegotiate prior contracts and treaties. Put you like that. Because there's a lot of things that we've talked about that could come to an end because when they're shut down and they're not going to be starting it back up. Things are happening. I know there's a huge upheaval about the food stamp and Section 8 housing.
Hold on.
That has been...
I'm going to do this real quick. All right. Welcome to the Patriot Hour. We are here discussing government shutdown and how that could affect, since we're in a shutdown period right now. Is it because we're severing some ties? When we come back up, could it be in a different manner on certain aspects? Continue on, Ben.
And so maybe possibly one of those aspects we see right now that the food stamp cards, I believe it's like the ECB or the EBT or something like that, and Section 8 housing. Now these two programs may seem like they're different, but in the actuality, it's still the government subsidizing programs. And where do they get their money from? Like Mike just talked about, we have coffers, we have a budget, that's allocation. Now there's rumors stirring around. And I don't know how true or not true these are, but this needs to be reported, that I believe the month of January was the last month that benefits were issued out to individuals on these particular programs. And there is thoughts rolling around that possibly in February, March timeframe, if we can't get this budget taken care of, there's not going to be enough money in those program budgets to be issued out to recipients. What does that mean? Possibly come February, March timeframe, there will be no EBT food stamp check
now that's under our
issued.
Possible old system. So I think there are, and we have to look into it. President, like Kennedy did, you have the right to make the Treasury issue backed things like silver or go to gold or some kind of and that's what we looked at. What Kennedy did.
The Federal Reserve is already acting on a treasonous, and DC is already acting as a treasonous sovereign country because the original Penn Constitution strictly says that the right to issue money, currency, shall be solely to the United States. Everything. And that's what based on gold and everything. Yeah, the power of the purse is what they call it. So the Treasury is the only part of our federal government that has the power to issue and to maintain the currency.
So then in 1871, they usurped our Constitution, folks, by implementing their own, taking that power away. And basically, if you think about, what's the Fed? They put themselves in the middle. Who wouldn't want that? If two people have like a constitution and the people had a really good deal going on, Of course, somebody's going to try to weasel in between that, and for no reason, just basically point fingers and say, you're still going to do the work. We're just going to tell you how and when, and then they make a bunch off of it. That's nuts.
So we've seen, we've seen JFK, not even going back to Abraham Lincoln, because I want to try to keep it more relevant for those of us who are still alive, that JFK did propose in the tail end right before, I don't know how long before, but before he was assassinated, he did propose 4 months. The executive order? The executive order, yes. So you covered up other ones. So there's already been implementation of them saying let's get rid of the Fed, because people don't have a basic idea of what the Fed does. They do nothing. They don't print money. We have our mints here. There's one in, what do we say? There's one in Denver. There's one in Pittsburgh, and there's a couple others. So we print the money. All we do is the Federal Reserve buys treasury bonds, right? Just a piece of paper that says, hey, here's a chunk of our federal government. Here, we can give it to you. And in turn, they just give us credit in the form of Federal Reserve notes, and then we print our own currency off, and then how much they allow us to print. So think about that. We do all the work, we print all the money, we do everything. The only thing they do is tell us how much we can print.
That's what I just said, that they made themselves a middleman, folks. To put it simply, back in the day, if you smoked a little bag, you can get a good bag of weed from somebody, and you wanted to go directly to the source because you got the best deal and you can negotiate fine. Somebody that's a middleman, that's going to just take a little bit out, and they always want to make something. That's all that happened. We got this group that put themselves right in front and just dictated, and the power of that is huge. That's another aspect.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They can buckle nations, put nations in desperate positions. We've seen it in the 30s.
Wars can come over. Then they like wars because they fund both sides. They sell the bullets and they sell the bandages. So they want to keep us in a perpetual state of division. So we're always fighting about things like, should we have a wall or should we not? I mean, really? Are you that ignorant? If we want our sovereignty, we have to have a lock on our front door, right?
What is all this? Not to cut you off, but the talk going around that the walls don't work. And then you got like Trump saying, no, if you look at stuff, they do. So what is that? Like, where shouldn't we have some really good solid facts that everyone could agree on? Look at the countries that actually do have a wall, one that's like secure, like Israel or something. I mean, maybe who else now is wanting to build a wall? Honduras or something, or Mexico on that side? They don't want to build one on our side, but they're wanting to build one on the Honduras, or they already have one. I don't know if it's Honduras's wall or
every port of entry to most countries, except for the ones in the European Union, have some type of a fence, a wall.
And they used to over
maybe
there.
Not the
They've
whole
knocked
way.
them down.
And they still used to. Well, because they joined the European Union,
that's
they
what
lost
I'm saying.
their
They used
sovereignty.
to, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it didn't work, why'd you knock it down? Is it more of a symbolic thing to show like we don't need? If that's what they decided at the time, I think it was more imposed on them. But,
to be a part of the European Union, if you wanted to be a part of the European Union, you gave up your sovereignty as a country to have the European Union govern your country and dictate your money. And what's happening now is the EU, and that's just as much as the deep state as it is here in America, is now all these countries say, hey, we like our sovereignty. Wait, our money's going down. Wait a minute, you're controlling the gas flow, the people
now, how
flow,
did they
everything.
get these people to think? Like normally you can do what they did by war and making something yours, or I mean, how did they even get this into the culture of their just?
It was a financial because what they did,
and you do this and it'll help you.
A lot of countries before the European Union actually was solidified, when they were championing or promoting it for the first year before it actually became signed, there was a lot of economic hardships in Germany and all these countries. So they had a huge economic hardship. The Deutschmark in Germany was super low. It takes a lot of Deutschmarks, and you couldn't take your Deutschmarks to France because they wouldn't really translate, and French don't want the Deutschmarks because it's degraded. And so what happened is if the European Union lied to these countries and say, well, if we all come together, then the Deutschmark will be more powerful, and the France and this, and they'll all be more powerful. When we take all that away, we get our European Union, and we're now a union. And so as a union, you give up your right to control your money. You give up your right for their constitution, all of them were amended. Because if you remember, the Germany Constitution was after World War II, after they had to pay crazy reparations, they had a constitution say we're now this. So when you lose your sovereignty, you lose everything. And so it was based on a financial coup or a financial disruption like the Great Depression and like these other places. Or how about, Rothschilds? How did the Rothschilds take over the Bank of London? Like literally, nobody said, "Oh, the Rothschilds." But well, how did they do it? Well, Rothschild had a man in the field, and when Napoleon won, Rothschild's men came back into town before any other newspapers and said that Napoleon had lost. And so Rothschild started selling crazy stuff on the stock market, and everybody thought, well, Rothschild must know something. Everybody sold. Rothschild had a parent company that very quietly bought everything on pennies on the dollar. And the next day of opening a business, Rothschild was a primary shareholder and owner of the Bank of London. Yeah. And the Bank of London is where we have all the Federal Reserve is based. That's where their power base comes from.
Similarly, here in the United States, the same thing happened. We had the very financial elites of this country, folks. Back then, in almost like we get Trump tweeting now, or some of these other, Bill Gates will send a tweet out. But back then, he did equivalent of a tweet, and it was in their little paper. I can't remember what they called that little system they used, but he did something that was equivalent of a tweet today or a Facebook post. He did that, and the financial elites would look at this little paper, and they saw his little quote, and it was like, ooh. So that started creating a panic of the 28 panic of 1928 maybe, or 30.
They started saying the banks were insolvent.
Yes.
They basically said, if you take your money out, you can't get money. And so people are like, oh my gosh, what do you do? They said banks were insolvent.
And then they called those ones back in. Remember them one loans they were doing? Real shady. You do it, but you had the 24-hour call in. Folks, people lost everything. The elite, again, this is a tried and tested thing. It's nothing new. It's basically they want to come in, hook, line, and sinker you, and it's just devastating after that. Wars start, then financing of the both sides. We saw this if you look into the facts of World War II. Even the Bushes, we know Prescott Bush. They got hit up on that. You look into Henry Ford and his ties.
He got slapped with trading with the enemy, with the Nazis. How do you think they got their tanks and stuff? And so we see this is not a new tactic. This is not a new game. This is a tried, tested, and it's well oiled. I mean, that's why none of this can ever work ever again if we stand on our own currency, printed in our own country, based on precious materials like gold and silver, or only gold and silver that we hold on reserves here in our country. That's a starting point. How we do business internationally, how we do trade and that tariffs and that kind of stuff, that's down the road. Do kings pay taxes? No. So maybe, like Bill Cooper, we only start paying constitutional taxes, which would be like commerce tax, right? Everybody's got to buy stuff, and that's what the tax is. And so you don't fund the public education through massive taxation. You fund the education through your local and county taxes. And if you're an affluent community, you're going to have a great school. And if you're not, you don't care about your schools, and you're not going to have a good school. It's not going to come from the government. And so this is where we talked about individual accountability. And I think that's what's coming. And you're going to be accountable for your rights. You're going to be accountable to exercise and know your rights. And if you don't know your constitutional rights, you basically will be subjected to tyranny because you were uninformed. And that's all we're trying to do here is inform you.
Inform you of your unalienable rights, folks. They... Like driving, we were talking about that one, just a small example, driving or traveling, because driving wasn't something that they talk about back in 1776, but you had the right to move freely throughout the states. But the federal government has taken that over by the form of you have to have a license, and now it has turned from a right to a privilege. And that privilege can be taken away really, really easily, as we know. Now, do we call for people should be able to just jump into a car, be all drunk, hit whoever they want, no matter what, it's their right? Probably not. So there's things that definitely have to be looked at and thought about. But that's not something I don't think that is too hard for us to come up with and figure out the right thing.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about this, Woodman, when it comes to what we're talking about here about the quote unquote incorporation of the U.S., the Act of 1871? Are you familiar, Woodman, about the Act of 1871, the District of Columbia?
No, I'm not. Not really. No, I'm not.
So, well, we had our own Constitution, and then about 100 years later, roughly, just a little under, we formed D.C. Well, they did.
Well, D.C. was already formed. It was given to Maryland gave a chunk of land to actually form. It was a municipality at first. You know what the municipality is, Woodman?
Go ahead.
Do you know what a municipality is, though?
No, not really.
Okay, so you know how you go to, like, let's say you go to Maricopa County. It's a municipality, and that's the courthouse. Right? The courthouse is a municipality of Maricopa County, right? So the courthouse,
right,
as an example. So the courthouse, the physical structure, is owned by that county. They do business in that county. That's called a municipality. The District of Columbia was originally a municipality, subservient to the states. In 1871, they formed their own constitution and became a sovereign country, a sovereign entity. So in 1871, the District of Columbia became its own country and started passing laws. Like Michael just said, you have the privilege to drive, but our Constitution says you have the right to travel. So they use word porn in their codes, policies, and procedures that is not law.
Now, our Constitution, just to bring this up, our Constitution, the original, talks about us having a capital and that it shouldn't really obscure more than 10 miles wide by 10 miles width. So they gave them like literally a platform of what they should work with, and that anything that they govern, which basically was for us to be able to do things overseas as a country, but they basically created their own constitution, started projecting their own laws outward on us, and usurped our own constitution. And even though our constitution says one that they create shouldn't go against ours, and things that
it should be in line, or
it should be in line, but it's clearly way out of whack and way out of line. Way out of line at this point.
The reason why we haven't stormed D.C. and wiped it off the face of this earth is because too many of us have unknowingly and unwittingly given consent. So if we've given consent, and this is very deep stuff, and the reason why we say when the Organic Act of 1871, pull it up on Google, Woodman. It's really awesome to kind of just look at that, and then you think to yourself, you have these few simple questions. One, do kings pay taxes? And if you come to that conclusion, doesn't a king have private property and sovereignty and borders? We have a kingdom. And when our framers came in and penned the original pinned Constitution, it gave us our sovereignty, right? The right of privacy, the right to have our possessions, not the right to not search and siege, the right to private property. But what happened is when DC became what they say either a nation state or a city state, because is DC a state? Well, no, it's the District of Columbia. Well, who's Columbia? And does she have any other districts? So these are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself. So what we're talking about, this movement, this Q, this all kind of stuff, we're literally looking, the end result is really the abolishment of the city-state of District of Columbia, turn it back into a municipality, and now the states have the ultimate authority, and the people within the states have the ultimate authority over the states.
Right.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Now I'll finish up with this. Our original pinned constitution in 1776 that was completed in 1786 was very clear about the chain of power. Who has the chain of power? Who has the power to make decisions? Our original pinned constitution said this is how it works. God's number one. We get our rights from God, right? They're unalienable. Number two is the state. The state has less power than we do. Number three is the federal government. So what the federal government did in 1871 is put it all backwards, flipped it upside down, put the federal government has the highest authority, then the states have the next highest authority, then the people have the next highest authority, and then God has the fourth lowest authority. So you can see how the original Constitution was set up to a godly manner, that every person is endowed with these rights that we know to be true. But yet now, the federal government tells us what we can say, where we can drive, what we have to pay, all these different things. And this has been going on for a long time, and this is the crux where 90% of the people that we talk to have no idea about that there's two constitutions, and we've literally lost the ability to really function in our original pinned constitution.
And I will put that a lot of people in their journey search of truth have stumbled across aspects of this and then dug in, and there's why these channels exist out there, folks. People are like, I'm a sovereign person, and they're trying to remove themselves from that system that they found out about, but still live in a effed up world, basically. And that's
you're still using money
thinking. Yeah, it was like you saw this evil system and you probably dug into it enough to be like, how do I remove myself? You need to remove the system, remove yourself, because there is no removing of yourself. There is only removing the system, not yourself. That would be foolish. That, and that's the way I took it at first too. When you're learning, like, ooh, I need to separate myself from this. No, it needs to be separated away. It's an infestation. It's a treasonous act that had came upon the American people in 1871, folks. So
yeah, because this 1871 was passed without the express approval of we the people. So when it comes to especially veterans, because veterans are oath keepers do not take an oath to the Organic Act of 1871 for the District of Columbia. Oath keepers, and everybody you see in this show right now, us three veterans took oaths to the United States of America. That is the original pinned constitution, not some crazy other country called the District of Columbia and how they operate.
Because it's a foreign government to us, folks. It really is. So do you think, well, why would they do that? Again, this is our own people that we elect and put up there. They weren't really the ones pulling for it. It was the people behind the strings, the people over in foreign countries that have no desire and don't care about your rights. They just wanted to trample on them. This is a form of invasion,
tyranny.
And the optics of it are good enough that they invaded a long time ago and they haven't left. All right, so the reason we need military tribunals is because the barbarians are inside of this gate. They've been here.
Dare I ask the question, did we really win World War I? Did we really win World War II? Or do we just think we did and everything's business as usual?
Something to think about.
World War I and World War II was well after 1871. If you look at these wars, people, and what they originally had deemed them as, they weren't wars. They weren't an act of Congress until after the fact. Think about that. And so if we're getting back to what we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that are endowed by these rights by their creator, how can you not want anything else? And this is not this is not like just came out yesterday. This has been for a long time. But this is what Mike and I think Woodben would agree with me. Now that you've just heard what we've just said right now, you are no longer able to use the excuse of I don't know. Because now, and I really think that in a whole, we're trying to push individual accountability. We've told you many times about the Organic Act of 1871. We've told you other things about human trafficking, about all these things. You can no longer dismiss that and say, we're wrong or we're crazy because you don't like the way we look or how we talk. Now it's on you. And remember that, because there's no more, well, I never heard that. Well, you mean nobody ever told you something and you never looked it up for yourself?
Yeah.
So that's what we always try to promote here.
That's the thing right there. Never looked it up for yourself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Get involved. Get involved. It's like Mike always says, you know, don't believe everything we say. Look it up for yourself.
Connect your
When
own
you look it up
dots.
for yourself, when you look it up for yourself, it makes more sense. You know?
Well, hey, 1871, the federal government usurped your personal constitution. No, they didn't. That might shock you. That might make you sick. Hopefully it does. Hopefully you get really mad at myself or Woodman or Ben, and you go and research it for yourself. And then in your midst of research, you come back, you put a comment down below. Thank you. You're right. Because that's what it's going to be. All right. That's the positive thing out of this whole movement, folks, is the people want to say it's a LARP or is it fake? You know that they're, Ben, you said it best the other night. Why would this system that is trying to do something be educating you on your constitutional rights, Ben?
Oh, why would they?
Why would a system, if it's a LARP or just a total gameplay, like be telling you about your constitutional
Okay,
original rights?
Yes. So think about this. Mike and I, we talk about this a lot because this is a huge thing. This information that's coming out, this QAnon, this movement, this kind of stuff that's going on. This is really big. We don't know who Q is. It's a very mystery. But here's the thing: why is somebody letting us know information about the original Constitution, what it means, we the people? I mean, I have this right here. You know, there's no way. I mean, this is we the people. So why are they using this type of language? This type of language hasn't really been used before. They say, well, yeah, it has. Every politician used. We're going to cut taxes and we're going to do this. Most, if not all, politicians, very few of them, talk about policies, codes, procedures, and not about the original Constitution. And then you have a guy coming out talking about the original Constitution, Q's dropping things about, well, the president can do this because under this obscure constitutional law he has that, or we're draining the swamp and taking power away from you and giving it away. And if you don't have any context to see what this person is talking about, it just blow right over your head. So that's why I believe that what's happening here is not only draining the swamp, the shutdown, the partial shutdown, and possibly the military action of really getting rid of the District of Columbia as a sovereign country and getting them back into check how they originally were supposed to be. Just a plain old little tiny municipality.
And you take it back to Bill Cooper. He said, you'd have to have a guy that came in and one fell swoop, because he had the people behind him, an outsider, by the way, somebody that's never been held any other position, never did this. And we know Trump wasn't in the military, never held another office in his life. And so we almost got this perfect scenario for it. And then you have people not even supporting somebody that's trying to give back the sovereignty of our own country to us. The people that think that it can never happen is because they know that they can't do it. I don't understand how 1% can be smarter than the 99% of us in America. We got a lot of smart people out here, even other people on YouTube or some of the other platforms. If they just use their intellect for good, if they would just harness it towards something that is useful. And I mean, geez, how can 99% of us be submissive or bow down to a 1%? If we all just stood up tall, they would coward. I don't get it. And honestly,
it's all It's all over money. It's all over money. Money, 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 money. When you get somebody that can control the money, you have controlled the world, and that's what they're trying to do really hard. They're trying so hard, you know. They got it accomplished in Europe, but we don't want to be that way. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, we always say this: preparation favors victory. And that doesn't necessarily mean physical preparation during a physical battle. But we would all agree that we are battling for the truth right now. And the best we can do is prepare. You know, a lot of you guys are commenting, you know, money, the Luciferian talisman. Well, yeah, look at your $1 bill. That tells you all about the occultic and who's controlling that. But why do we keep those in our... That's a Myra Amschel Rothschild. Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws. So this guy says this, and we know who he is. And so if the Fed's going down...
a long time ago. I think that was said in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Well, the Knights Templar perfected... the Venetians and the Knights Templar perfected banking and as a debt-based system, and we've been using it ever since. Remember, folks, at least in my personal beliefs, debt is a sin. Or I should say, not debt, interest is a sin. Thou shalt not make money on money. So interest is a sin. It's very interesting how a lot of these world bankers, where they first started, where they got kicked out of, some countries kicked them out. Because there's still a lot of religions that believe that interest on money is a sin. So... take that for what it is, or what you will, and you know, don't take it to the bank because that's what we're talking about now.
All right, we're done on the Patriot Hour. I just got a little video for over there, folks. We're gonna take a few question and answers here. If you guys got any.
Hey, by the way, who out there in the United States does not lock your door at night when you go to bed?
Yeah, everyone in here in the live chat, if you lock your door at night, just, you know, not that you fear...
Put a 1, right? Put a 1.
Yeah,
if you lock your door, put a 1. If you don't, put a 2.
Yeah, if you lock your door, put a 1. If you don't lock your door, put a 2. And we say you're locking it. How did Trump put it as well? And I've heard it before. Not because you fear what's on the outside. It's because you love and want to protect what's on the inside.
They're born.
All right, so we got a number 2. 1, 2, couple of 2s. And I guess it would depend on your safety levels and where you feel like you live, or, you know, what you... So 1 is that you lock it. 2 is that you don't. Number 3 is that you don't have a door
what we're
on
talking
a home.
about.
Yeah.
You have a TV.
Number 4, if you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If they're going to be honest, they're going to tell you right now that they lock their doors.
Yeah.
You know, apartment complexes, they all lock their apartments. They lock their windows. The same thing with people. It used to be when I was growing up anyway, we didn't even worry about locking the door. Now it's just so terrible. You have to protect yourself. And that's what the wall is all about, protecting ourselves.
I agree. And this whole adage of, they're already here, Woodman. You know, we already got bad people here. And I've been on a battle with that. I'm like, look, unfortunately, in our country, we have citizens that are evil or bad people. We also lock them up. Those people cost an average of 80 grand a year out of taxpayers' dollars. So we don't want to be known to, and we got a lot of people in our prisons, by the way. They're over flooded, but it's like, we can't be the nation's prison, by the way. You know, everyone wants to come here either to be just living, or they want to come here and get locked up, because we got the best prison systems too. 3 hots and a cot. I don't know, but we don't.
Well, you know what's interesting? I will say, a lot of the people who are putting up 2, like, I don't like my doors, I use a 357 or I use an AR-15. So that's
That's the
we didn't
same
ask
thing
that
as a
question.
lock.
We didn't hold on. We didn't ask that question. We didn't ask that question. We asked if you locked your doors. We didn't ask if you had a bunch of guns and
I sit on
artillery.
my
We just
couch with my beer and my gun in this hand, and I just wait.
I mean, yes,
Well, that's great
folks,
too. I mean,
that's great too. Listen, we live in cities, urban and rural areas. I don't have much neighbors. I have mostly trees and neighbors, and I feel very comfortable that I sleep in a nice piece of iron that protects my family. But the question was proposed: do you lock your door or don't lock your door in the way of safety? Now, a firearm is a secondary form of security, if we can all agree with that, right? That is a force multiplier, as the military would call it. Every vet knows exactly what I'm talking about. So it's like, yeah, I would consider an AR-15 a form of a lock, or your 357, or your 30, your whatever, your 44 Magnum. I like in-house 44, out-house 9mm, just every different flavor. But that's a form of security. What do you guys think? I could be wrong.
Look at, and I'm looking at some of these people that did put a 2. A lot of them are just also adding rural area. And that's fine. I'm not saying you have to lock your door. If you feel safe and you don't have to, that awesome. I know as a kid in the area I grew up as well, didn't probably lock doors every night.
Yeah, I didn't grow up with
doors
locked
stay
doors
open
either.
all night.
Yeah.
Who knows? But those of you that claim that you don't lock, and then maybe you can also say you don't have a gun. I don't lock my door, I don't lock my windows, and I don't have a gun. What do you do then if you wake up in the middle of the night and somebody is in your home? What do you do? Can you tell us what you're going to do? And I hope it's not, well, I will make it to my phone and call police, because that's.
They only come after a crime has been committed. They're not there to prevent a crime. Remember, they can't detain you unless they can articulate and they suspect you of a crime, either that has been committed or is being committed. And it's, I guess take it to a more simplistic thing. What do you do to keep your family safe?
I say this.
Do you lock your doors? Do you carry
They're going to karate chop them. Folks, seriously, so if you're that, I don't lock my doors, I don't have guns, and then if you find somebody in your house, is it really that wrong? You almost invited that, possibly, and now you're mad that they are standing in there, and you want to inflict violence on them with a karate chop? Are we serious? Why didn't you just lock the door so they couldn't come in, and you avoided everything?
Well, I always say, my grandpa told me that locks only keep an honest man honest. So we're talking about the honest man. A criminal, I don't use a front lock with him. I use more lead in that action if he tries to come into my property, not my home, my property. And so
that's a secondary that's a secondary line of defense right there. You have primary, then you have your secondary.
Yeah.
And so basically with what we're talking about, you guys, was it basically a very, I guess it could be maybe a little bit too simplistic, locking your front door, but it's a great point to make that. What do you do to protect your family? Do you trust everybody? Okay, then leave your door open and go away for a week and people come in, that's fine. Or do you actually take some precautions to secure what you've worked hard to own and have? And when you leave your house, what types of good feelings do you have that your house is secure and not the cops? Because
they're and Woodman just said the cops, that might be the illusion everyone starts thinking. And I think that's why they literally have the protections like that set up. It's, I don't need a gun. I can just always call the cops. They carry guns and they kind of patrol. It does say on their cars, most of them around the country, I believe, protect and serve. But folks, that is not the case. You don't normally call a cop until you've had a crime committed upon you. What I mean by that is, you come home and you realize your car or house was broken into. And now you want to call because you're mad that somebody took something of yours that you worked hard for. And you're calling them, and then they come out and they say, we're not going to do much. We'll take this report here, and we'll note it. You're not going to get your crap back. Now, put that to where you're home, like Ben said, or Woodman we're talking about here. You wake up, and there's an intruder in your home. These are what you got to think about. You're going to actually call the cops at that point? Well, of course, you probably would, but we know the average respond times. You should know that in your area. There's probably you can look that up. Find the average response time. I mean, what are you going to do in that 6 to 12 minutes waiting?
And those of you in an urban area who live way outside of society or very far away, your police time is going to be hours if you live in a rural area that's too far because you're out in the boonies.
Who's to say this? Who's to say this person doing this encroachment here? They're already inside. Who's to say they're going to let you have the time to even pick up the phone and call the cops? Are you kidding me? If they're going to break into your house, they're going to come in there like that. They're going to have some kind of agenda set up, and it's not going to be like, okay, I'm going to wait for you to go ahead and call the cops, and then we'll get that over with, and I'm going to go ahead and continue on robbing you.
Yes. No, you might be dead.
They come in, they take over.
And you might have your own thought process of like, I don't lock my door because I don't feel evil, or you're not going to do it. You know that you don't do bad things, so therefore you want to leave your window unlocked and the breeze and the door unlocked. But there are bad people that come in. So as much as it's like everyone has a plan. Like, well, I don't have a gun and I don't lock my doors. If I find something, I'll call the cops. They should come take care of it. And you might have never been in that situation before, and it's only going to take that one time that you're either dead or really wounded or knocked over the head, all your stuff's taken, then you come to realizing that scenario is kind of a bad idea. Your whole thought process on how that was going to go down. It's like everyone has a plan until you get hit in the face, and then, everything changes, and you got to, Mike Tyson said that, everyone's got this strategic thing they're going to do, and then you get punched in the face and you're trying to shake it off.
It's all done.
And everything changes all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, again, what we're talking about here is logical thinking, personal accountability, and understanding. Me personally, my own opinion, the reason why I lock my door is if anybody in this earth wants to come and knock on my door and to see if I'm home and jiggle the door, it doesn't open. That's a sign that says, hey, you can't come in here. Or almost like my no trespassing sign at the front fence. That's okay. Some people can't read. I understand. Maybe you're a little bit slow, a little bit mentally challenged, and you can't read very well. That's okay. That's okay. That's why I have secondary precautionary measures to where if you can't see, or if he's blind, he stumbles into my yard out of the woods. God only knows. I don't know how he would, but if he did and he's blind, he couldn't see the sign, he tries to jiggle my hand on the door, it's locked. Hey, so now he knows or she knows. What we're trying to say is you can't live vicariously, or you can't live your life always depending on somebody else to be prepared for your emergency. What we used to tell? I used to tell my ex this all the time when we first got divorced. Your issue does not constitute my emergency.
I always say your piss poor planning doesn't constitute an emergency on my behalf.
So think about that, folks. That's being prepared. So I mean, how what we say. We're always one for the original Penn Constitution. We're for truth. And like Woodman and Mike tell you, don't believe what we say. If you think that what we said here is wrong, then disprove us, please. Because then I would know more, Mike would know more, Woodman, we would know the truth. So if there's something we've said today, try to disprove us, please. Put it in the comments, do some of your own research. If what we've said sparked an idea, maybe it sparked some, like Mike said, maybe some anger for what we said because you've been doing something for so long and we said something that hurts your reality, and cognitive dissonance kicks in, please research it. What we're talking about would take maybe 10 minutes to research, and you'd have your mind blown. Just 10 minutes. Not a lifetime like we've been doing here, but just 10, 15 minutes. It would blow your mind. And
all right,
so
we'll
that's
take a
all
short
I challenge
break.
it to everybody.
We'll come back and finish it up. 5 minutes. Listen in on this. We'll be back.
I think the D.C. Circuit case was the first one. I think that was in the 60s. And people have lost sight of the fact that it's really a question of who gets the relief in a case. And under the case or controversy, it should be limited to the parties. And, when earlier you could have a court in one jurisdiction decide it, and that would be the rule in that jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. But that didn't debar the government from continuing its policies elsewhere, and eventually you'd get differences, and they would work their way up to the Supreme Court. So I think that I'd like to see these universal injunctions challenged.
Well, it's not, I don't know how many federal district court judges we have, let's say 650. As I understand it, one can enjoin a congressional statute nationwide, even if the other 624 judges disagree.
That's right.
All right.
And not just a statute, Senator. I think what's different, what we're seeing is the willingness of courts to set aside, even the kinds of exercises of national security power that, 20 years ago would have been unimaginable for a court to challenge. And yet a district court judge somewhere can enjoin some action that has a bearing on the safety of the nation. And then the judicial process can take years and years to get that up to the Supreme Court.
I've just got a few seconds left. As I understand your testimony, General, Mr. Mueller will write a report, submit it to you as Attorney General, and then you will write a report based on that report and release your report. Is that right?
That's essentially it, but I wouldn't assume, it could easily be that the report is communicated to the department before, assuming I was confirmed. That could be a month away.
Well, let me tell you what I'm getting at. I've got 6 seconds. Now 4. The American people deserve to know what the Department of Justice has concluded. And they're smart enough to figure it out. I've said this before. The American people don't read Aristotle every day. They're too busy earning a living. But if you give them the facts, they'll figure it out, and they'll draw their own conclusions. Doesn't matter who spins them. They'll figure it out for themselves. And I would strongly encourage you to put this all to rest, to make a report, a final report, public, to let everybody draw their own conclusions so we can move on. If somebody did something wrong, they should be punished. But if they didn't, let's stop the innuendo and the rumors and the leaking, and let's move on.
I agree, Senator. And let me say, earlier I misspoke because the acting Attorney General is Matt Whitaker, and I referred to Rod as the acting Attorney General, but in fact the report would go to Matt Whitaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to remark, Mr. Barr, that your family is showing a prodigious level of patience, indefatigable endurance, and that should be marked for the record. You're a very lucky man. You know that about 30-plus states have legalized medical marijuana or adult use. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes.
In 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded the Cole Memorandum, which provided guidance to U.S. attorneys that the federal marijuana prohibition should not be enforced in states that have legalized marijuana in one way or the other. Do you believe it was the right decision to rescind the Cole Memorandum?
My approach to this would be not to upset settled expectations and the reliance interests that have arisen as a result of the Cole Memoranda, and investments have been made, and so there have been reliance on it. So I don't think it's appropriate to upset those interests. However, I think the current situation is untenable and really has to be addressed. It's almost like a backdoor nullification of federal law. To me, it's a binary choice. Either we have a federal law that applies to everybody.
And so I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, but how would you address that? Well, do you think it's appropriate to use federal resources to target, marijuana businesses that are in compliance with state laws?
No, I said that. Yeah. That's what I said. I'm not going to go after companies that have relied on the Cole Memorandum. However, we either should have a federal law that prohibits marijuana everywhere, which I would support myself, because I think it's a mistake to back off on marijuana. However, if we want a federal approach, if we want states to have their own laws, then let's get there, and let's get there the right way.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to just move on. But it's good to hear at least the first part of what you said. During your previous tenure as Attorney General, you literally wrote the book on mass incarceration, or at least wrote this report, The Case for More Incarceration. You argue that we as a nation were, quote, incarcerating too few criminals.
In those days.
And that the solution was more incarceration for more people.
Excuse me.
Please, sir.
For chronic violent offenders and gun offenders.
Well, I mean that's the challenge, sir. And you argued against the bipartisan legislation in 2015 quite strenuously.
I did.
But that's not that's not the nature of incarceration in this country. In fiscal year 2016, only 7.7% of the federal prison population was convicted of violent crimes. Overwhelmingly, what was initiated in those times that led to an 800% increase in the federal prison population, overwhelmingly, that was nonviolent drug offenders. Right now, our federal prison population is overwhelmingly nonviolent. 47.5% of the federal prison population are incarcerated for drug offenses. And I guess hearing your arguments then and hearing your arguments against the bipartisan legislation that we brought out of the committee in 2016.
But Senator, I think that's wrong, what you just said, okay? I think when you have violent gangs in the city, killing people, murder and so forth and so on, sometimes the most readily provable charge is their drug trafficking offenses, rather than proving culpability of the whole gang for murder. So you can take out a gang on drug offenses, and you could be taking out a lot of violent offenders. Do you think that the murders in Chicago are they're related to gangs, and including gangs involved in?
And sir, and again, and we can get into the data if you'd like, and I'd like to get some more pointed questioning. But this is the sort of these are sort of the tropes that make people believe that in inner cities we should have such profound incarceration rates. And I'd like to ask you specifically about that data, because I think it's language like that makes me kind of concerned and worried. You said you hadn't reviewed, you said earlier in your testimony, you hadn't reviewed criminal justice data about this actual issue of incarceration versus non-incarceration. I just want to know, will you commit to commissioning a study on just the concerns that we're talking about right now, about the efficacy of reducing mass incarceration, and publish those results? Would you be willing to do such a study yourself?
Well, no, as I understand it, I've been told that there's a lot of data to support the First Step Act.
Yeah, and that First Step Act goes directly towards addressing a lot of the problems we've had in mass incarceration. And so if you're saying that it is necessary to deal with violence in communities by over-incarcerating, here's a bipartisan group of senators that's working towards reducing mass incarceration. And that's why I think it's very important, which I appreciate you saying you didn't know because you hadn't reviewed the data. I think it's very important that you review the data and understand the implications for the language that you're using, which brings up this language of race, which is often not said explicitly, but when you talk about Chicago in the way you just did, it brings up racial fears or racial concerns. And you stated that if a black and a white, this is quoting you directly, are charged with the same offense, generally they will get the same treatment in the system and ultimately the same penalty. You previously quoted, and I quote you again, there's no statistical evidence that there of racism in the criminal justice system. Do you still believe that?
No, what I said was that I think that's taken out of a broader quote, which is the whole criminal justice system involves both federal but also state, local justice systems. And I said there's no doubt that there are places where there is racism still in the system. But I said overall, I thought that as a system, it's working, it's not predicated on.
So can I press you on that? Overall, the system treats blacks and whites fairly. From my own experience, I've lived in affluent communities, I've gone to the college campuses with you. There are certain drug laws applied there that's very different than the inner city community in which I live. But let's talk stats, let's not talk our personal experiences. And so I've sat with many of my colleagues and many conservatives who readily admit what the data shows. And so I have a whole bunch of reports which I'll enter into the record from nonpartisan, bipartisan groups, even conservative leaders talking about the rife nature of racial bias within the system. For example, the federal government's own data, the U.S. Sentencing Commission's research shows that federal prosecutors are more likely to charge blacks with offenses that carry harsh mandatory minimum sentences than similarly situated for whites. The federal government's own data shows that black defendants were subject to three-strike sentencing enhancements at a statistically significantly higher rate, which added, on average, over 10 years to their sentences. And so, with numerous researchers having found stunning racial disparities rife throughout our system and in the federal system, which you will be the chief law enforcement officer of, and primarily overwhelmingly for drug laws. For example, I don't know if you're aware or not of the Brookings study that found that blacks are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for selling drugs, despite the fact that whites are actually more likely to sell drugs in the United States of America, and blacks are 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for possession of drugs, when there is no difference racially in America for the usage and possession of drugs in the United States. I don't know if are you familiar with the Brookings study?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so just a follow-up, will you commit to commissioning a study examining racial disparities and disparate impacts of the policies that you talked about and that led to mass incarceration, the policies that you defended when you criticized the bipartisan 2015 sentencing reform legislation? Will you commit to, at least as the most important law enforcement officer in the land, to studying those well-documented racial disparities and the impacts it has?
Of course I'll commit to studying that, and I'll have the Bureau of Justice Statistics pull together everything they have, and if there's something lacking, I'll get that, and I'm interested in the state experience. But when I looked at this, I think 1992 was a different time, Senator. The crime rate had quintupled over the preceding 30 years, and it peaked in 1992. And it's been coming down since 1992.
And sir, I just want to tell you, I was a young black guy in 1990s. I was a 20-something-year-old and experienced a dramatically different justice system in the treatment that I received. Okay. And the data of racial disparities and what it's done to black communities, because you literally said this about black communities, and I know that your heart
was touching women.
I know that your heart was in the right place
when they were passed out of college.
Hey, I want to help black communities. This is what you're saying.
The
benefits of incarceration would be enjoyed.
This guy talking right now, Woodman, was the same guy during Brett Kavanaugh confirmation, was all against him because of the charges of all the stuff from 35 years ago. And this guy in his college wrote a paper when he worked talking about how he would get girls real drunk and then try to touch on them. They'd throw his hand off in their drunkenness, and after the third time I realized maybe I better stop. But I don't hear you again, brother. Are you muted?
Better now?
Yeah, there it is. You got an on-off switch on there?
Yeah.
It's a mute? Okay.
God, something Trump said. What were we talking about? My memory's bad.
That Cory Booker. I was telling you that he actually...
Oh, yeah. Trump himself said, okay, if these women were at this party and everybody was drinking and nobody can remember anything, he's like going, how are you going to do this? She doesn't remember exactly when it happened. She doesn't remember what day it happened. There's just so many things that she just doesn't remember. How can you go ahead and go by her word? Did you hear that about when Trump said that?
Like how I don't know. I mean, I just remember it being all a lie. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well, he done it in a laugh. It was in a speech. He done it in a laughing manner. He's going like, he really did laugh it off, and the crowd was 100% with him. He's going like, well, how can you? She doesn't know, what day it was. She doesn't know, what house on the street it was, and there's so many things she doesn't remember because everybody was drinking. Come on, write it off as a college experience. He was laughing about, how can you arrest somebody if you don't know anything about what's going on? Like who did what? Are you sure that's the same guy that done it? You can't remember what day, where the place was at. How do you know which guy it was? You're all drinking. College experience. But anyway, yeah, Did you see that speech, Ben? That
Yeah,
Trump
I was
saying
catching
that?
it. Yeah, it was definitely interesting him saying that. You guys, some of the things that when we tell you guys this stuff, it's almost you have to see this stuff. It happens every day in front of you, but if you can't hear it, you'll never hear it. If you can't see it, you'll never see it, even though it's right in front of you. So it's interesting how they're saying all of these things on one side, then Trump basically backs them down and like, oh, well, we never really meant to say that. And then they're trying to backpedal and trying to somehow turn the words they said into something different to mean something totally different, but it's the same words.
Yeah,
More word porn.
Word trickery.
Yeah, word trickery for sure. No, it's interesting what this what is this Barr, this proposed active guy, the Attorney General is supposed to be or coming up on this nominee, what he's saying about the medical. Think that's on not a larger scale, but it also is very clear because what is he saying? He's saying that, well, for right now, we're just going to keep quo. Well, isn't status quo that if the states say something, their law should be higher than the federal law, right? Remember how we talked about it's the power of the people in the state. And so if the states, and we're already overwhelmingly more than half of the states in the United States of America are already functioning as a medical marijuana, and a lot of states are also recreational. Why hasn't the federal government snapped to attention and getting these laws off their books? Remember, they're laws and they're codes and acts and procedures. They're not the original pinned constitution, because in the original pinned constitution, I can grow whatever I want in my backyard. I can grow green beans, marijuana, I can grow fruit, I can grow anything I want as long as it's on my property and I can harvest it. And so, again, I'm very nervous or tentative about him saying this different act, that they're imposing higher penalties on these individuals depending on what city you come from because they're known to be violent actors. So we're just going to go ahead and do violence. And then, of course, do some marijuana on top just to give them a longer sentence. And we've already seen the downfalls.
Why are they still arresting people for marijuana when it's legal in Washington D.C. People? I don't get it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna say that the feds are in control and they make the laws, well, if it's good enough for them, it should honestly be good enough for everybody else. I don't get that portion of it. Also, that save so much money feeding people in prisons you don't need to because they sold somebody a bag of weed. Are you kidding me? There's certain counties that are easier if you get busted for coke or meth or whatever they call that stuff than you do weed, because they're starting to do this anti-weed thing real heavy. Like, why? Gee whiz, come on, man. Like I say, good enough for the feds, good enough for us. If the feds are going to act like whatever they are, top notch, whatever, why can't we have that? States have their own laws, but honestly, fellas, we're structured under this Fed thing. Honestly, we really truly are. If they really have the last say so, and no matter what happens in the United States, things like that should just be the same for everybody.
Well, I could tell you this. I'm going to say this. And this is my own research. So, of course, I followed Bill Cooper for a long, long time. And a lot of people, you've caught different tidbits, some of his different speeches, and depending on where you caught him at in his life. And when he freshly got out of the service and he thought one way about like aliens and spacecraft until what he thought at the end of everything after gathering the largest intelligence gathering for civilians, he kind of took it differently and thought he found out their game plan. But also in his journey, I noticed that he became really engulfed with the constitutional laws. He knew it really well. He called them a foreign government. That was, in that system in the late, 90s, 2000s, again, he got into this position where I think he had some tax issues, and he was so fed up.
He wasn't paying his property taxes.
He knew the guys, and he determined that I'm done. I couldn't wake enough people up to understand it. I'm going to frickin' start living it myself. And that's where the problems have always arrived in this truth movement. You're going to land on the truth, and you're going to know it. And if you start living it when the system was still in no way, shape, or form close to being reformed back then, it was the beginnings of a wake-up. You can't separate yourself from it. I am telling you, it will not end well for you.
Yes, because what happened is like we've talked about, property taxes are unconstitutional. Remember, people, kings don't pay taxes. Kings pay tariffs. Tariff is one king doing business with another king. So what are we talking about here? So William Cooper, I know there's a couple, a lot of his rants was telling exactly, I pay taxes, folks. I pay all constitutional taxes required of me as an individual. But property taxes, he wasn't paying those. And what do we always tell you? Well, if you don't pay your property tax, who comes and takes you away? The government. So do you really own your house? Well, then the conversation stops. Nobody wants to say that conversation. I'm a homeowner. Accordingly, I have a mortgage to a fractional reserve banking system that I've partially contract with, so I can live into this facility like everybody else who has a house or an apartment or a roof over their head. If you're not homeless, you've contracted an agreement with somebody else, just like me, just like Mike, just like Woodman. Your dwelling may look different than mine, but it's the same contract. And so
I'm going to jump.
This is what we're talking about. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump into something else here, guys. Just to change it up. This is funny. Great being with the national champion Clemson team, the Clemson Tigers, last night at the White House. He ordered up a bunch of burgers, by the way. Because of the shutdown, I served them massive amounts of fast food that he paid for. Over 1,000 hamburgers within an hour. It was all gone. Great guys, big eaters. Of course, they are tearing him up over this, folks, that he got. And there's a bunch of Wendy's burgers, which was kind of funny. But he had came out and said, I think
Wendy's.
He's like, I ordered a bunch of Whoppers. He said Whoppers or something.
Well, funny.
So he didn't go get them. He didn't go get them himself because.
No, of course, yeah. But it's funny if it was.
That's Burger King.
That's funny. Well, how about this one? If he did get from Wendy's, what's the phonetical first term of Wendy's? Wendy's. We're all the win.
We're winning.
Wendy's. We're winning. We're gonna win so much you're not gonna like it. You're gonna say, "Let's stop winning." He's gonna say, "No, we're gonna keep on winning."
Read that one, Woodman.
Why is Nancy Pelosi getting paid when people who are working are not? That's listen. I was going to bring it up too because all they're hurting is the poor people, and I really think that's just terrible. That's really all they're hurting is the poor people. Good Lord, man, read the Bible. Get with the program.
Amen. Amen.
They have no conscience. They don't care. They have until we buck the system. They're going to keep doing that. President Trump's been bucking the system for a while, and he can only do so much. No matter what he says, deep down, end of the day, he can only accomplish so much. The best thing he can do is do like he's doing now, tweet prior to the crooked news media, grabbing hold, twisted everything around, and somehow having Q come around and keep informing us of really what rights we do have, and not what we should do, but what we should investigate and decide for ourselves.
Yeah, get knowledgeable. Yes. Just inform yourself. Read this one, Ben.
3 West Virginia state delegates are introducing a bill that would divert $10 million from state's surplus to help build a wall at the U.S.-Mexico border. Do you think Indiana, Michigan should donate state funds towards the wall? I would like to. So the first part, people, what did he just say? The state of West Virginia has a surplus. at least a surplus, folks, of $10 million. Wait a minute. So they're doing so well, huh? I guess West Virginia is doing so well. They have a surplus of at least $10 million that they're willing to give to the wall. Wow. That's interesting. I wonder how many other states have a surplus of money that they just want to, give away. Doesn't that show that they're being prosperous and things are doing well, and the numbers for the GDP are astronomically awesome, and everybody actually is doing well?
Well, I heard through the grapevine that to put up the wall cost an average of $17 a piece for each individual. And think about this, folks. I don't know what state you live in or what's going on there, but in the state we live in has a wheel tax for $25. Think about that.
Dollars, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, you're bitching about 19 or whatever, 17 or whatever it is.
Bucks. 17 equals Q, folks.
Yeah, check it out.
That's what's hilarious.
And we pay $25 each for wheel tax.
17 equals Q. 17 equals the amount you need to give for the wall to get built. Polls are showing that people are beginning to understand the humanitarian crisis and crime at our border. Numbers are growing up fast, over 50%. Democrats will soon be known as a party of crime. Ridiculous that they don't want border security. Here, read this one, Ben. We'll read a couple of these and we could talk about them. Whoa. What is that?
Oh, no namers on the screen again.
Who is that? All right. Where was I? It was right down here. There's a couple good ones. Right here. 7 hours ago. Read that one.
Oh, here you go. A big new caravan is heading up our southern border from Honduras. Tell Nancy and Chuck that a drone flying around will not stop them. Only a wall will work. Only a wall or steel barrier will keep our country safe. Stop playing political games and end the shutdown. He only said, folks, 15 minutes, we can be bing, bang, boom, and be done. The shutdown, he could literally, moments after the 15-minute meeting with these guys, he could announce, boom, and reopen it, and everybody get paid, everybody get back paid, and y'all had a nice little vacation.
Look, in the past, they've already allocated more money than that anyway. Why are they putting up this? They're putting up a wall in front of us. Why?
Yeah.
There you go. So, and I believe what Woodman's referring to, and I was just reading an article on this a few days ago. I think it was under Bush Jr., right before Obama, in his 8 years. He did something, and they were calling it a technology wall. They were literally, and they allocated $40 billion. I don't know what ever happened, but they were supposed to build this new structure, barrier, and then have lasers and whatever was the newest, awesomest, probably put into some R&D stuff for it. But it was $40 billion, and it was supposed to be this, what they described, and I'll try to pull up an article, a wall of technology, and everyone agreed, and it was great. But whatever happened to that? Where did that money go?
That was $40 billion, and all Trump wants is 5. You know what I mean? What is that? 1/8?
Again, I think, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting right because a lot of individuals, and Mike says, hit it up.
Yes, let me hold on here. Return. Fine, just do that. Hold on here. Okay.
Why do we have to protect ourselves?
So look, in 2006, under Bush, Democrats were saying build that fence. So as a senator, Barack Obama once offered measured praise for the border control legislation that would become the basis for one of Donald Trump's first acts as president. The bill before us would certainly do some good, Obama said on the Senate floor in 2006. He praised the legislation, saying it would provide better fences and better security along the borders and would help stem some of the tide against illegal immigration. Trying to get into the meat of this. 2006. I don't want to hear about Trump on it. I wanted to hear about Bush.
You might have to go back farther than that.
Right here. In the House, the measure passed 283 to 138 with 64 Democrats supporting it. Right here.
There, well, hold on. Go back up. There it is.
The plan was not nearly as expensive as Trump's. It allowed for about 700 miles of fencing along certain stretches. Congress put aside $1.4 billion for the fence, but the whole cost, including maintenance, was pegged at $50 billion. Right here.
Yeah, there it is.
Over 25 years, according to the analysis. The government had constructed about 650 miles of fence by 15. Man, this wasn't the original one I read about a wall of technology, they were calling it. But it's clear here. Bush signs bill authorizing 700-mile fence for border. Everyone supported it. And you can't go off the fact like, well, we supported, the 700 miles to kind of, they knew there'd be a lot of open spots still. You can't go for that. If you're starting to build and if you're putting $50 billion, that means you'd want it like 100% zipped up, not, it's medieval now. It wasn't medieval in 06. It ain't medieval now.
A $50 billion earmarked for a 25-year project. Wow, you can see they want big money and take a long time to put as much crime in there. And like, well, we need this stuff. So they were calling for it. Even the big numbers had no issue.
Nothing's gotten better.
Nothing's gotten better. Only gotten worse, folks.
There it is. Right here, folks. It's called the virtual fence. So they did also, we'll look at this one here. Democrats who killed Bush's virtual fence now back to it. So that was another twist. Back then, Bush was like, we need, technology. He was calling for a virtual back then.
Right.
And
now it's technology. You like that word porn they're using on you guys?
The Department of Homeland Security spent 7 years and more than $1 billion trying to create a wall of technology at the border, or as President George W. Bush called it, a virtual fence. It was a bust. Now the idea has returned as the main thing for the Democrats. They want to go round 2 on a virtual wall. Wow. As long as all the illegals are wearing Oculuses, then they'll see the wall.
Don't do as I do as I tell you.
We just got to gear them up. Hey, why not just give all the illegals virtual gear, and then we have a virtual wall, and we have a bunch of virtual soldiers on it, and it looks real mean, and a wall of fire. Why don't we make it a wall of fire?
Check this out. We'd be like on Blazing Saddles where they had that toll booth out in the middle of nowhere for 10 cents.
Yes. Yeah. 10 cents, please.
You know what, Mike? Woodman, that's going to be coming out. I can see it right now. Maybe another Patriot Hour meme video, that little snippet of the Democrats border wall, and have that little thing, just a little tiny crossway. And then you want, Republicans border wall, the huge old school medieval castle wall with moats and with like little small slivers so the archers can go but shoot either way, nobody can go in there.
Right.
What do you guys want the link for? Hold on here. I need the link. Jax. Jax 4767 Joyanne. What link would you like there? I'll drop it.
I don't know if it's the article that you were just reading on the virtual fence. Or
which one? The virtual fence or the... Where's everything at? Recover. Ooh.
I like the part about where they denied it, then they accepted it. That was pretty, shoot back to that.
Well, it's coming up to almost 1,500 hours Eastern Standard Time, about 3 o'clock for all you civvies out there.
You got to get out of here?
Yeah.
You got to go, Ben?
I got to. Yeah, right. I got some stuff coming up. Got family thing doing their whatnot. So
we'll sign Ben out. Me and Woodman will finish up here. We'll talk to you later, brother.
I'm gonna go. I'll be Ben in the comments for sure. Yes. So I'll be catching you guys here. Got to do a few things. So lots of love again, you guys. I leave the show in well capable hands, and again, like, share, subscribe, hit the thumbs up for sure. When you hit the thumbs up, it kind of messes with the YouTube algorithms and it gets this stuff out. We've said some really crazy stuff today that has nothing but truth and empirical data behind it when we talked about like the Organic Act of 1871 and things like this. So don't be afraid. Get the truth out to the ones you love and those around you, and preparation favors victory.
All right, brother. Give me a minute here. Sorry. Signing out.
No worries. No worries. I was actually going to look at some of the comments.
All right, that was Ben. Still got Woodman in here. Give me a second, folks. Got to reorganize this. There it is. All right, we got Woodman back in the... Can we hear you, brother?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So, yes, Ben, that was awesome. Maybe we'll get back here later tonight if he's available, if he's still listening, if he's in the show or not. We can do another one a little bit later. Call time, probably not. I got the same going on. Me and Woodman are going to finish this out. I guess we could have if I would have thought about it. We'll definitely maybe do a later live show this evening. Woodman, any final thoughts for the people here? I'm sending you guys razors. Jack Rooney says we need razors. I guess I got a little scruff. And there's Woodman to my...
Yeah.
You don't shave anymore now that you don't have to, do you, Woodman? Well, I mean, why would you?
Right. I haven't shaved for probably a good 20 years, but mainly it was because of my wife. She's not with us anymore, but
God bless
I
her
haven't
soul.
had the I guess you could say the intestinal fortitude to go ahead and shave it off and continue on. She's still in my heart, so
she was a good
sorry
woman.
About the shave. Yeah, sorry about the shaving there, big guy.
Yeah, focus on the message, not so much the
right.
the shirt or my hat,
right,
or his hat, or my look at the flags and listen to what we say. Now, I would like to say again, I like to talk. Let me get this recording here. This will be a good little chunk. All right, I'm here with Woodman, former airborne. He'll always be an airborne, but of course, neither of us are in the service anymore. We did our time, didn't we, Woodman? Your clearance,
yes, sir.
What was that again? Because I know I worked when I took your paperwork in at the Legion. I can verify anybody that would have come from our previous Legion on this show, but since you're here, I have seen your paperwork physically in my hands, and I've actually helped Woodman. We took a VA endeavor years ago to get paperwork in. So, but your security clearance, what was that? A NC or a
INTNAC?
INTNAC.
Which ENTNAC. Yeah, it was a little different. They really. It's not so much of a big deal now. Back then it was. They really dug deep into your family, and but we had to be very trusting people to have the job I had. So
Well, and I like to explain to people clearances as well, because I had a clearance, not that, but I had secret. So that would allow, let's say you're, either standing in a room with certain people talking, certain levels, you're allowed to hear certain things. And also in the security clearance, and if you're in the intel communities, sometimes you hear a lot of bad information. You have to, because if you're looking for, I always try to tell people, if you're like listening to phone call, like people on my ship, when we were floating in certain areas, there was intelligence that would literally have headphones on like I do, and they would be listening into foreign phone calls, and these people could speak many languages, and they'd listen to phone calls, and they were listening for key words, hot things. Maybe they were already pre-recorded even back in the 2000s then, and they were able to, you go through, and it's no different than today. You're going to listen to a lot of bad stuff, but you're trying to find that gold mine of information, that little piece of intel that can be the game winner in a war or some kind of strategic positioning. So what do you say to the people sometimes if, when we read things, like we always say, listen to what we say, maybe take it, get angry, but do your own research. Is there any wrong into hearing something? Is everything Q say real? Or like he says, this info is necessary. Some people are like, Q ain't real because I've been following it for 2 weeks and nothing comes right. Well, we also know the enemies are here hearing it, and the enemies are here listening. So would this info be necessary? Just give us a little breakdown. You got some background. You can talk about this a little bit.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be involved in direct earshot of, you talk about presidents and generals talking. They do make plans, strategy, and so forth. And I was one of the people said who could come in and who could leave the meeting. There was times where we were inside the meeting. We done this in garrison and also in the field. In the field, they call it DTOC, the Divisional Tactical Operations Center. That was what I'd done for a job. So, I kind of really know a whole lot more about what's going on back in my day than anybody like the average Joe. Now, jobs like this still exist, folks, and there's people out there that actually hear the correct thing themselves, So some of them you can't say a whole lot. I can't say a whole lot about what I've experienced, and that's been 40 plus years ago. Some of these people need to leak something out. That's God bless Q. He's got to be somebody really close to the president because he doesn't come out and tell you. He gives you enough information. It's like dangling a carrot in front of a mule or whatever, when you're on a cart. It just can't quite get there, but look, still trying. So what he's doing is he's giving us enough information that we can go ahead and search ourselves. Yeah,
organic.
Go get out there and look.
Would this possibly be because to not break national security protocol? I mean, that's what this system's fighting, is the last administrations that were leaking, breaking all kinds of national security classified rules, which is treason in a way. So is that possibly why, if we were getting disseminated information from somebody that had an overall bigger picture and they could organically lead? And then we've also been told disinfo is necessary. Now, people could take that to be like, well, that way you say that enough, and then anytime you're wrong or something doesn't happen, now it's disinfo. If it happens to be right, it was what you was intended. Some people think this would be easy enough just to pay attention, hear things out of the queue, and then look for it. And when it doesn't happen that next day, or there's never really dates given, but it's like, it's not real because it's not happening. Is that possibly they know that the enemy is paying attention?
Those are the people that just concentrate on the negative things. And, there's a lot of those people in our society. You could tell a story 3 different ways and they wouldn't like any of them.
That's right.
They'd find something wrong with them. So,
they should just move on.
Yeah.
Well, folks, eligibility for access to classified information even is commonly known as security clearances. Woodman's had one. I've had one. His is different from mine. We know the different levels of it and what it entails. Bottom line is, you're not allowed to. So, on that note, would the media be in a privy state to where if you do have the president, and I don't care if the president was Barack or Bush or Clinton, right now it's Trump. Do you think Trump, and especially in the state of condition we're in with some of these agencies being, the heads of them being relieved and let go, fired, that Trump has, and then also with his tweets, we know that he tweeted, "Oh, just found out my administration or the Obama administration spied on my campaign." The media was really quickly to come out and say, "We have no proof of that. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about." And then 4 or 5 months later, it starts coming out heavily. And then the media attacks the story, not that Trump's wrong, but that he is still wrong. He said, folks, we told you 5 months ago Trump was wrong. Nothing that he was saying even made sense. And now they got some proof, but now they spin it to say that it wasn't spying on him. It was spying on this guy to the left of him and this guy over here to the right of him. Trump said him. So now they're telling you that Trump was wrong because it wasn't specifically him. But this is where it's all leading to. So Trump's been right all along. Trump has some of this clearances, folks. He's a president. So you have the media that should be digging into these stories instead of trying to dispute them all day long. It's 5 a.m., Trump tweets, and then the journalist guy's like, I don't know anything about this. Trump must be lying. 4 months later.
You know it.
Hey, what are we getting wrong here? It's unbelievable, folks. It's unbelievable. The whole point, like Woodman said, digging into your background on a security clearances to find out your character, to find out if you have shady dealings, all that. Once you're deemed appropriate, you get these, and then typically you wouldn't want to lose them. So we've already broke that down in the past. Let's move on past it. But just remember, if somebody's giving you information, sometimes you should maybe listen to it and then try to verify it. It's not wrong to hear sometimes a little bit of wrong info. It happens. We haven't tried to put anything out on purposely wrong, but I'm just letting you know for people that think like every little thing Q says is happening. I haven't seen it happen yet. Well, you don't know the timing on it. If this was a true military intelligence, and they're disseminating information down in a manner they're doing it, you're not going to be able to figure it out at home watching this unfold on YouTube. They know that the enemies are here. They know that they're looking. So just don't feel bad. Don't think like, I should be able to figure this out. Because if you could, then any intelligence from a foreign military could, or the deep state actors or the cabal, they'd be all over it as well. They're not dumb because they're not in the positions they're in currently because they're dumb. Somehow they've managed to rise to these positions of power, and you're not dumb if you've done that. You're actually very smart in some ways. Give them a good finish up, Woodman. Talk to them. Give the people some encouraging words. Whatever you got.
Well.
Whoa.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Right, I had the wrong one up. There you go.
Folks, love your neighbor. It says in the Bible that, you're supposed to listen, but you also have a mind to make up your own scenario or whatever, or your own thoughts. Because there are people out there that are going to misguide you. Communication is where it's at, because any of us have mental telepathy. And there was only one perfect person that ever walked this earth, and that was Jesus Christ. So we have to communicate on an honest level, not trying to be like, oh, I know, I talked to Sam yesterday, and no, not that way. Be compassionate, because we need to be side by side, hand in hand, elbow to elbow, to stand up for ourselves and your neighbor and your family. This is the United States of America, and we do believe in that. I fought for that. Mike fought for that. Every veteran fought for that. I don't care if I didn't even see combat. they still fought for it. We gave this to you people. Airborne.
All right, brother. I'm going to leave it on that. Salute. All right. All right. We'll be back later tonight, possibly, and we'll see if Woodman can join in, depending on if it's too late or perfect timing. But we'll be back. I will be putting out a warning video to the Patriot Hour, so we can rock and roll that way. And you guys get the alert. Brings in so be prepared for a little bit more in the room maybe this evening. Other than that, have a great day. God bless, Godspeed each and every one of you. And we'll see you back here on the next Patriot Hour.